Now that we've defined that Northern Colorado is not the northern half of Colorado, but instead actually just the two counties of Larimer and Weld County, and what cities it does and does not include. And if you haven't watched that video, go back and watch what is Northern Colorado. Otherwise, what this video is going to talk to you about, what it's like living in Northern Colorado. What's up, everybody? This is Patrick Soukup with Soukup Real Estate Services here in Fort Collins, Colorado. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing if what you're looking at is learning everything there is to know about Fort Collins and Northern Colorado, living, eating, sleeping, playing. And if at the end of this video you enjoy the content, give it a thumbs up, comment, engage, interact. It's been so much fun talking to those that agree, disagree, interact, and have commentary. So thank you. And for all those people that have already made their way out to Fort Collins and reached out to me and we're working with and have already bought properties, that's so exciting. Because as much as we like making these real estate videos on YouTube, we enjoy more working with people buying, selling, and investing here in Fort Collins and in Northern Colorado. So send me a call, text, email, whatever works for you. I've got your back when it comes to relocating, moving to Fort Collins and Northern Colorado. Without any further delay, let's jump into this video of living in Northern Colorado. Enjoy. Alrighty, so we know what Northern Colorado is, Larimer and Weld County. But what are the major cities within those counties? We've got Fort Collins, Loveland, Greeley, Evans, Windsor, Wellington, Timnath, Berthoud, Johnstown, Severance, Red Feather are going to be some of our biggest cities in that area. And within those cities, our population is expected to go from 700,000 people as of 2020 to just over 1.1 million people by 2040. I don't suspect the demand to move to and relocate to these cities to slow down in any way, shape, or form. In fact, Weld County was one of the top 10 most relocated counties in all of the United States in 2020. Between the rural living, not necessarily home affordability, but comparatively to major metros and markets, the value for what you can get here in Northern Colorado, price per square foot, lot size, not having to live on top of your neighbors, while still having some major amenities all within 45 minutes to an hour with Denver to our south, Fort Collins, the way that it's growing, the population is just not expected to slow down in the slightest. In fact, the fastest growing town within Northern Colorado is Timnath at over 550% since 2011 to 2019. Now, granted, the population in 2011 was 500 people. And so now with it being over 3,500 people, we're not talking about too much. But the largest city with over 40% growth between 2011 and 2019, Windsor. So we're seeing this dramatic increase in population, and Fort Collins, between that time, will have also had some major population growth, right around 10% to 20% population during those years as well. In fact, Fort Collins had a 16% population growth. All of these communities are growing. They're not flat. They're not necessarily a hockey stick. Well, except for, Severance and Timnath. Those are kind of, and Berthoud. Those are a little bit more hockey stick, but really the main reason for that is they had such a small population to start with. So we actually had Weld County come in the top 10 for most relocated counties in 2020. And again, I just don't see that slowing down. And with the growth and development of Northern Colorado and big builders relocating or, building these great communities here, it's just going to be a pretty exciting thing to see over the next 10 to 20 years. And we have a strong backbone in education here in Northern Colorado with University of Northern Colorado and Colorado State University. And then some smaller community college in Ames and Front Range Community College. those supply, a significant amount of population growth during their school years, as well as stability for employment for a lot of individuals that are living here between, cafeterias, landscape, building maintenance, teachers, whatever that is. Those two universities supply a significant amount of GDP and population stability, rental desire in those areas in and around those community or those colleges. So, we have a strong backbone in our education. 2 Division I schools as far as athletics here in Northern Colorado. And then from there, our elementaries, our Poudre school districts, our Thompson Valley School District, Greeley-Evans are gonna be our 3 biggest school districts that, if you're looking at moving here, probably the strongest of those 3 is gonna be Poudre school districts. And then you could argue between the 2 of Greeley or Thompson Valley. And then there's some smaller school districts as well, but those 2 are going to supply significant amount of employment for individuals that are moving here, and a great education for you and your kids or family, whatever like that that's moving here. I'm a product of a public school, and I can't say enough or talk highly enough about what type of education I had going through school. And but you could argue that you're watching these videos. Who knows? I say some funny things, or say some make some funny comments. So the education side of things, be a judge for yourself. And how are you gonna get to University of Northern Colorado, CSU, Ames Community College, Red Feather? Where and how are we going to get to where we want to go? Well, our main interstate is I-25. Now, this is about 10 years behind the population demand that this requires. We're expanding to 3 lanes all the way up, I think, to Wellington, but that needed to happen 10 years ago. So the traffic and the annoyance is pretty substantial. And then going east to west, we've got US 34 that's going to connect Estes Park to Loveland, to Greeley, and east. And then 287, Highway US 287 is gonna go from Fort Collins north to Red Feather, all the way south. You take it all the way down to Denver and beyond if you like. And that's gonna be our main highway that's going north to south. That is also a major thoroughfare through Fort Collins. As we spoke about in some of our previous videos, if you need to get anywhere within Fort Collins, specifically shopping, you're gonna find yourself on US 287. There's some smaller highways off there, Highway 285 and Highway 14 are going to be going east-west, north-south that will connect east of I-25. But if you're looking at needing to take a longer trip and you're not necessarily wanting to drive, we do have a small municipal airport, Fort Collins Loveland Airport, that does not have a operating tower, which is a big reason why we don't see commercial airlines flying in and out of there and available to the public. It's more or less a private airport for the foreseeable future until we potentially get a virtual tower within Fort Collins Loveland Airport. It was in discussions. I truly don't know where it's at right now. It looks like it might be stalled or not necessarily have the technology there yet. But once and if that does come to be, there will be airlines such as Allegiant that might take you from Fort Collins to Vegas or Scottsdale or some other smaller municipal airports. But if you want to get to DIA, one of the nicest airports in all of United States, it could range anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how far northwest you are here in Northern Colorado. Speaking of which, let's talk about some travel times. If you want to get from Fort Collins, Midtown Fort Collins, to East Greeley, you're looking at about 45 minutes. I used to take this trip daily when I was boxing and I was training on 8th Avenue in Greeley and working in downtown Fort Collins. I'd put my gear in my car and drive to Greeley, whether it was by Highway 14 or I-25 to US 34 and then east. But truly took me about 45 minutes from door to door. And it used to be Greeley was a half hour away. Well, Greeley has definitely grown. Traffic has become more of an issue. So it's going to take you about 45 minutes from Midtown Fort Collins to Greeley. And then from my office door in Old Town Fort Collins to South Loveland and or Berthoud, TPC, is gonna be about 35 to 40 minutes. Now, TPC is considered in Berthoud but it butts up with South Loveland. So that's gonna be a travel time that you're gonna take US 287 all the way south, and between the red lights and the two downtowns that you're gonna go through, Fort Collins and Loveland, it will slow you up. There is that highway, but it does, like I said, have to go through those two downtowns that will slow you up. You can hop onto I-25, but going east to west is gonna be probably the same time and distance. And then from Fort Collins to Red Feather, if you wanted to go hiking, boating, or not boating, but rafting, fishing, whatever that might be, I would say, again, 45 to 50 minutes, and even 60 minutes if you're going, all the way through to the end of Red Feather and beyond. So it is a large area, but all within a half hour, 45-minute commute within Northern Colorado. And I talk about that because it is important to realize that there are a significant amount of people who work in Greeley and commute to Fort Collins, or in Fort Collins and commute elsewhere to work. So whether you're working for JBS in Greeley and will decide that you want to live in Windsor, or you work for the Greeley School District and you live in Windsor, commuting there, or you work for Vestas in Windsor and you're commuting from Fort Collins, there are some major economies here in Northern Colorado: JBS, Vestas, Agriculture and Loveland, CSU, UNC, Tolmar, Anheuser-Busch. There is definitely some larger employers here in Northern Colorado, and so if commuting is what you're gonna have to do to be able to drive to afford, if you're looking at buying, that is something to take into consideration. How far is it gonna be if I wanna buy a house in West Greeley and commute to Southeast Fort Collins? Well, West Greeley and Southeast Fort Collins, you might be able to squeak it out in 20 to 25 minutes. It just depends where and what you're trying to do when you're moving here and looking for work to do here in Northern Colorado. Now, if you're living here in Northern Colorado, you are going to be living in that town and community, specifically spending time in their downtowns. And Greeley, Windsor, Loveland, and Fort Collins all kind of have their own unique downtowns. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some in Wellington and Severance, and there's a downtown in Timnath, but those four that I mentioned are probably the biggest downtowns that are active with, whether it's redevelopment of the Foundry in Loveland. It was about 3 city blocks that were basically raised by Brinkman Construction, and on top of it built multifamily, a movie theater, commercial retail. And on the north side of Loveland downtown, there's newer multifamily, and then squished in between is kind of older, run down type buildings, but with the vibrance and growth of Loveland, I see that downtown blooming. Or if you're spending your time in Greeley. Now, Greeley's downtown is definitely East Greeley. It's along and near 8th Avenue. There's a cool paver driveway where you can also walk. The Rio is down there to get a margarita, some great Mexican food, or, new developments that are coming. Investors are finding their way to Greeley, Colorado. They're putting money into multifamilies, multi-use commercial spaces, and redeveloping them and rebuilding these areas to where it's beautiful, it's safe, it's clean. And so Greeley's downtown is definitely something to keep an eye out. But you're probably not going to be living in downtown Greeley and coming to Fort Collins too often. Now, don't get me wrong, you will, because Fort Collins downtown is Old Faithful. Now we're talking about US 287 and Mountain Avenue, College Avenue, Mountain Avenue. You can find your way walking at least, 10 blocks or more, north, south, east, west, from Oak Street Plaza to Old Town Square to the Exchange, and then east, west along Olive to go grab, some barbecue, or Choice City Butchery, one of the best sandwich shops in Fort Collins. Or again, just spending time down in Old Town Square, playing in the fountains. So there are gonna be people that make their way from Loveland, Greeley, Windsor, Wellington, all over the place that aggregate, into Old Town Square. In fact, folks from Wyoming and other smaller, states that, southeast Nebraska or southwest Nebraska are gonna find their way down to Old Town Fort Collins, because it's just one of the most vibrant areas that there are. And a smaller but yet close downtown that has a cool, it's along Windsor Lake with some redevelopment, some newer buildings, new restaurants, people pouring money into Windsor, Colorado, but definitely a smaller downtown, just a quick strip on the east side of Windsor. The one thing that I see about the downtown Windsor that I just don't like and can't stand, and I don't see how it can get better, it's a single lane heading east and west. They did not expect this type of growth going in Windsor, Colorado. College Avenue is 3 lanes going north, 3 lanes going south. Fortunately, with all of the traffic, it is sufficient for now. I don't know if it's gonna be sufficient in the future, but Windsor's downtown, 1 lane going east, 1 lane going west. It is a bottleneck. Windsor High School, middle school is right there, so it is an annoyance, and I don't know how they're going to overcome that. So we'll have to watch and see what Windsor does. So those are some different downtown atmospheres here in Northern Colorado. And again, you can go check out Severance and get some Rocky Mountain oysters. Google it yourself. Or, Timnath, small town, but growing on the residential side. But those are the 4 main downtown areas that you might find yourself visiting and spending time at. So I'm born and raised here in Fort Collins. Of course, I spend the majority of my time here. In fact, in previous videos and living in Fort Collins, I've talked about how much of a travel snob, I and other people in Northern Colorado are. We're so used to only spending 10 to 15 minutes driving, and if it's longer than that, it's ridiculous. In fact, I bought my first house in Loveland, Colorado, and it was only about a 20-minute commute from North Loveland to downtown Fort Collins. But I was so used to only a 10 to 15-minute drive that it was just too much for me. So I ended up selling that house and moving back to Fort Collins. And you might think that maybe, hey, this guy only knows about Fort Collins. Well, I can tell you, I've got rentals in Greeley, rentals in Loveland, rentals in Fort Collins. I live in Fort Collins, born and raised in Fort Collins, played basketball through summer school, or not summer school, but played summer basketball in Greeley through those different tournaments and leagues. Seen the development of Windsor, Berthoud, and Timnath firsthand, working with real estate clients. And I'll exactly admit, I don't go further south than Berthoud. If you're looking at buying in Longmont or, living in Longmont, I'm probably not the person that you want to talk to. But as far as Northern Colorado goes, and now that I know that Northern Colorado is Larimer and Weld County and not necessarily Boulder or Longmont, I can talk highly and educated about these areas. And so some exciting things that are happening is, TPC Colorado and Berthoud, Colorado, one of a tour scale course in Colorado. And I was fortunate enough to play with a buddy of mine just a few weeks ago. It's beautiful. Multi-million-dollar homes going up there. Phenomenal scenery, views of the mountains, with a community that's growing around its residential. As we've spoke about, commercial follows rooftops. And from there, Timnath, again, 550% growth since 2011 to 2019. Something's going on there. And its commercial is just now kind of starting to come, but Timnath is so close to Fort Collins and Windsor that you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. Windsor, an extremely fast growing community, or Old Faithful in Fort Collins. Either way, you're 10 minutes to Windsor downtown or 10 to 15 minutes to Fort Collins downtown. So that's kind of an exciting area to look at and live. And then just a few miles east from there is Severance. And again, Severance is this fast-growing community with a beautiful high school and area that is, minutes from Fort Collins, minutes from Windsor, and minutes from Timnath. So we're this smaller community, aka less than 1 million people, covering a significant amount of geographical land, but lots of different exciting things happening. Loveland's a little bit of a challenge as far as its development having to be redevelopment, because the city plan is just not as exciting as some of these other communities are, with industrial next to commercial, next to single family, next to multifamily, backing to open space and an art, park. So, but Loveland is ultimately a very arts, culture, revolving community. So I don't have anything down to say about Loveland besides it does have a long way to go. But East Loveland along I-25 is masterfully developed. McQueenie's have done a phenomenal job developing that area off of I-25, and we're so grateful to have the McQueenie's as a developer here in Northern Colorado. And speaking of which, the McQueenie's have just bought and purchased, or sorry, I should say they are in the process of buying through foreclosure the Fort Collins Foothills Mall. And what they plan to do with that is potentially put some more multifamily, kind of re-envision what's going on there. But it needs something done because, like as we spoke about in some of our other videos, Foothills Mall is something that is in the middle of Fort Collins that really needs to be bustling and vibrant for that surrounding area to be successful. And from there, you know, Wellington recently has an issue with its water. In fact, Northern Colorado has an issue with its water. I will tell you, some of the cost of living and the affordability of our housing is due to the lack of water. We're building this humongous reservoir here to the northwest of Fort Collins, the Glade Reservoir, and it's going to be able to provide water for the potential growth and expected growth of Northern Colorado. But for the time being, I can tell you that Wellington's water taps went from $25,000 to over $60,000 right now. So developers are having an issue with the economics because Wellington was always this bedroom community to Fort Collins that was more affordable and you just had to make your commute. Well, now, with the water taps being as expensive as they are, Wellington's just not as affordable as it once was. It's still more affordable than Fort Collins, but it's not the 10 to 15% discount that you could have expected in years past. And Windsor has this huge vacay type living development in Raindance. I have a friend that lives there. I have other friends that are looking at buying there. And between having, I think it's 6 builders in the area, this resort style pool, fishing, restaurants in the area, and just right near Johnstown, which in itself is this booming community with Shields and all of the development that's going on in Johnstown. But Raindance in Windsor, if you're looking at a new build and you like Windsor, it's definitely a place that you might want to explore to see what they have and what options they have available. And finally, Greeley and Evans. They're kind of this, you know, brother, sister to the east. And when I first started getting involved with investing in 2011 and 12, and my dad was my partner at the time, we did not look at Greeley. I was such a huge fan of Greeley, but he was old school. You know, he came here in the 60s to Fort Collins and has been around since. And Greeley was just that cow town, right? I mean, what's that smell? If you're driving along I-25, and this is still true today, so do not think that this is not true, but when you drive along I-25 and you kind of pass Johnstown area, making that turn, making that bend, you get a little bit of a whiff of something. What's that smell? It's probably Greeley and Evans. With JBS there and, you know, its massive, massive beef industry that it has, makes sense. But it doesn't necessarily detract from the people that are looking at moving there. It's something that I think actually as you get closer, maybe the smell jumps. I have no idea because I have not lived there, but for whatever reason, there's a strong smell, aka JBS, but people are willing to accept it and still, you know, live there. So Greeley and Evans, one of the largest, you know, growing cities in the United States, and again, Weld County with those bigger metros in Greeley and Evans being kind of the backbone of Weld County, dictating that population growth, coming in the top 10 in 2020 for relocations. So there you have it, folks, living in Northern Colorado. From what our population's expected to do, to employment, what it looks like traveling, bigger cities, exciting things, what the downtowns look like. I hope this video has helped you understand a little bit more of what it is like to live in Northern Colorado. And if you have any more questions or more detailed questions, please feel free to reach out. Comment below. Give it a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video, or send me a text, email, or give me a call if you're considering moving or relocating to Northern Colorado. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, take care.